Imagine a world where humanity's thoughts, art, and discoveries were as confined as the dark corners of a forgotten cave. Now, picture the flicker of a candle igniting that darkness, illuminating ideas, aspirations, and artistic brilliance that still resonate today. That flicker was the Renaissance, an era that didn't just change art and culture but fundamentally reshaped the fabric of society itself. Today, we'll delve into how the Renaissance changed the world forever, and I promise by the end, you'll have a richer appreciation for your very own place in history. Stick with me, because the journey we're about to embark on is as transformative as the Renaissance itself. The term Renaissance translates to rebirth, and what a rebirth it was. Emerging from the shadowy grip of the Middle Ages, this period marked a flourishing of creativity that swept across Europe from the 14th to the 17th centuries. But what fueled this explosive growth? What sparked such a shift in thinking, in art, in the very way humanity viewed itself? You might be wondering who the key players were in this dramatic transformation. From the enigmatic genius of Leonardo da Vinci to the revolutionary thinkers like Machiavelli, let's explore how these titans left their indelible mark on the world. At the heart of the Renaissance was a palpable excitement about rediscovering the classical treasures of ancient Greece and Rome. Scholars, driven by a newfound zeal for learning, dusted off ancient manuscripts, uncovering ideas that had lain dormant for centuries. This intellectual revival gave birth to Humanism, a movement that celebrated human potential and achievements rather than focusing solely on divine matters. Could this shift away from religious doctrine and towards human experience be the foundation of modern thought? Absolutely. Allowing for a greater exploration of sciences and philosophy, scholars began asking questions that challenged established norms. The likes of Copernicus would later use the newfound curiosity to postulate that the Earth revolved around the Sun. Now, think about the audacity it took to confront centuries of accepted belief. This was not merely a scientific revolution, it was a fundamental rethinking of humanity's place in the universe. One could argue that this thirst for knowledge birthed the modern pursuit of science itself. Surprising, isn't it? As we traverse the art and culture of the Renaissance, let's not overlook the staggering technological innovations that emerged. The invention of the printing press by Johannes Gutenberg around 1440 changed everything. Books, once reserved for the elite, became widely accessible, allowing ideas to spread like wildfire. Imagine what it meant for the average person to suddenly have access to texts. It was as if the chains of ignorance had been broken. The ability to print in vernacular languages meant that knowledge could reach the common man, sowing the seeds for more democratic societies. Would modern democracy have taken root without this revolution in communication? Shifting gears to the realm of art, the visual metaphor for Renaissance ideals, we see a dazzling emergence of masterpieces that capture the complexity of the human experience. Artists like Michelangelo and Raphael surpassed traditional techniques, employing perspective and deriving inspiration from human emotion rather than just religious iconography. Their works were revolutionary and pushed the boundaries of what was artistically possible. For instance, look at Michelangelo's Sistine Chapel ceiling. This isn't just artwork, it's a monumental example of how art can invoke emotional responses and provoke thought. How did a simple brush become a tool for such profound expression? The answer lies in the belief that art should reflect human experience and beauty. The question we might ponder is, does art still serve this role in today's world? While exploring the richness of Renaissance art, one cannot overlook the complicated connection between art and politics. Wealthy patrons played a pivotal role in shaping the era's artistic landscape. The Medici family in Florence, for example, used their vast wealth to fund artists and thinkers, essentially molding the artistic heritage of the time. This fusion of art and power raises intriguing considerations about the motivations behind creativity. Were these artists truly free, or were they bound by the desires of their patrons? What comes next will leave you speechless as we see how these relationships can have lasting impacts on cultural narratives. But the Renaissance was not merely an artistic revolution, it ignited a religious one too. The emergence of reformative thinkers like Martin Luther challenged the Catholic Church's status quo, leading to the Protestant Reformation. You might be thinking about how art and religion are intertwined. Well, consider how art was once primarily an expression of devotion. With the advent of the Reformation and the questioning of church authority, art began to take a more personal, individualistic approach. The very spiritual landscape shifted, leading not only to new denominations but to a wider acceptance of diverse beliefs. You might be wondering how all these changes affected the world beyond Europe. The Renaissance spurred exploration into the unknown, challenging the boundaries of geography and cultural perception. Figures such as Christopher Columbus and Vasco da Gama sailed into the uncharted waters of the New World, forever altering human interaction on a global scale. This period of exploration wasn't simply about discovering new lands, it's a testament to humanity's yearning for connection, knowledge, and trade. But what consequences did these explorations have? The answer involves colonization, the exchange of ideas, and sadly, exploitation. It is crucial to interrogate the complexities of how this exploration simultaneously expanded minds while also contracting them into narrow views of superiority. As we continue to unravel the complex tapestry of the Renaissance, let's pause for a moment to consider its implications on contemporary society. The values of individualism, inquiry, and humanism set the stage for the Enlightenment and, ultimately, the modern world we navigate today. The Age of Reason emerged as a direct offspring of Renaissance thought, cultivating ideas that sparked revolutions across Europe and the Americas. Is it an exaggeration to claim that the Renaissance laid the cornerstone for everything we take for granted in our daily lives, in education, government, and the arts? Not at all. While we marvel at the achievements of the Renaissance, there's also an undeniable tension embedded in this narrative. Alongside the elevation of culture and intellect, there existed a darker side, such as a rigid social hierarchy and the marginalization of certain groups. The transition from medieval to modern thought created a dichotomy that would fuel new debates about progress. Did the artistic and intellectual flourish justify the social inequalities that persisted? It's a critical question worth pondering as we venture deeper into this era. As we draw closer to the midpoint of our exploration, I invite you to reflect on how this transformation weaved itself into the daily lives of ordinary people in the Renaissance. The effects of this cultural upheaval were not confined to the soaring cathedrals and celebrated artworks. They resonated in the towns involved in burgeoning trade, the schools that began to sprout with a focus on classical education, and the parlors filled with lively discussions about philosophy and ethics. But how did these changes filter into the homes and hearts of those not in the elite circles? Surprisingly, they did, in ways that would forever alter the socio-economic landscapes of Europe and eventually the world. The Renaissance instigated a shift in how individuals viewed their own agency. As people began to see the value in human experiences, personal stories, and local cultures, a more profound sense of identity began to emerge. In a society that did not prioritize the individual, this idea of a uniquely personal narrative was revolutionary. The rise of vernacular literature during the Renaissance, notably in the works of authors like Dante and Petrarch, offered new avenues for people to engage with their culture. How empowering must it have felt for individuals to see their language and stories celebrated? Now, as we navigate these currents of change, we cannot forget the critical role of women during this era. Often overlooked, women like Sofonisba Anguissa and Artemisia Gentileschi broke through artistic barriers, creating works that not only received commendation but also challenged gender norms. Their paths, though fraught with gender bias, inspired future generations to assert their place in the annals of history. How curious it is to think that even amidst a male-dominated landscape, these extraordinary women contributed to the richness of Renaissance culture. So, as we draw this first half of the narrative to a close, we've examined the rebirth that swept through Europe, transforming not just the landscape of art and culture but the very essence of humanity itself. We've seen artistic genius flourish, scientific inquiry blossom, and social structures begin to shift radically. However, there's still much more to unveil about how the Renaissance impacted our world irrevocably, paving the way for both enlightenment and conflict, progress and social reform that continue to echo throughout history. Stay with me as we plunge into the second half of this exploration, where we'll navigate the intricacies of conflict born from Renaissance ideals and their lasting imprint on contemporary civilization. Our journey is far from over, the most fascinating revelations are yet to come. As we plunge into the second half of our exploration of the Renaissance, we find ourselves at a crossroads. The remarkable achievements we've discussed laid a strong foundation for progress, yet they also set in motion a series of conflicts that would challenge society in unprecedented ways. This paradox of advancement amid disruption is a defining characteristic of the Renaissance, and it is essential to understand its implications for the world that emerged. One of the most significant conflicts that arose was the thrust toward religious reform. The impact of thinkers such as Martin Luther cannot be overstated. His 95 Theses, which criticized the Catholic Church's practices, struck a chord with many who were increasingly disillusioned. What began as a theological debate spiraled into a full-fledged reformation, fracturing the once unified Christian Church into multiple denominations. This schism would significantly alter the political landscape of Europe. Can you imagine a society divided not only by ideology but also by the very fabric of governance itself? The alignment of politics with faith had profound consequences, leading to wars and conflicts, such as the 30 Years' War, which further illustrated how deeply intertwined personal belief was with social identity. The Renaissance didn't just rekindle interest in classical antiquity as a matter of intellectual curiosity, it wielded the power to question long-held beliefs and systems. This questioning led to the rise of skepticism and a re-evaluation of authority. While the influence of the Church waned, new ideologies emerged. Thinkers like John Calvin and Ulrich Zwingli instigated discussions around predestination and personal piety, while others like Thomas More and Erasmus pushed for social reform grounded in Christian humanism. As you reflect on this complex interplay of ideas, consider how the ideal of human potential coexisted with the chaos of division. Did the emergence of individual thought democratize spiritual beliefs, or did it exacerbate societal fractures? As the Reformation took hold, the Counter-Reformation rose to combat these burgeoning alternative interpretations of faith. The Catholic Church, recognizing the urgent need for reform, launched a series of initiatives to reclaim its authority. The Council of Trent reaffirmed Catholic doctrine while initiating reforms aimed at reducing corruption. The rise of the Jesuits aimed at education and missionary work spread Catholicism to new areas of the world, even as it strived to enhance the Church's spiritual leadership. The Counter-Reformation transformed art as well, generating a style known as Baroque that sought to evoke emotional engagement and reaffirm Catholic ideals. Was this an inspirational revival of faith, or a desperate effort to cling to power in the face of a rapidly changing world? To fully grasp the Renaissance's enduring impact, we must also consider the establishment of modern nation-states that began to emerge during this time. Centralized power bodies arose, often built on the lucrative frameworks established during the Age of Exploration. The newly discovered lands provided both resources and wealth that further fueled the ambitions of powerful monarchs. Nations, armed with knowledge and confidence gleaned from Renaissance humanism, began to forge identities independent of the Church's influence. The Age of Exploration, which thrived alongside the Renaissance, paved the way for colonialism and the establishment of empires. Figures like Columbus and da Gama not only expanded the geographical horizon but also introduced new exchanges of culture, trade, and, tragically, exploitation. The consequences of their voyages set the stage for a global interaction that transformed entire continents, reshaping economies, societies, and ecosystems. It begs the question, did the pursuit of knowledge grant humanity enlightenment, or did it sow the seeds of domination and oppression? As nations engaged in trade and conquest, the Renaissance ideals of individualism and human dignity were juxtaposed against the brutal realities of exploitation and subjugation. The intellectual and artistic flourishing led to a greater awareness of global interconnectedness. However, it also often ignored the inherent complexities of these interactions. The influx of New World goods revolutionized economies, leading to the rise of merchant classes who began to challenge the traditional aristocracy. This shift in social order paved the way for capitalism, but alongside economic advancement, we must confront the ethical quandaries and moral implications that arose from colonialism. Across Europe, the effects of Renaissance thought extended beyond the halls of academies and churches into the realm of governance and civic duty. The ideals espoused by philosophers like Machiavelli, who advocated for pragmatic governance in The Prince, laid the groundwork for modern political science, emphasizing the importance of power dynamics and statecraft. But this wasn't without its contradictions. The teachings of morality and virtue juxtaposed with the harsh realities of political maneuvering raised critical questions. Does the end justify the means in the pursuit of power? How do ethics inform leadership? Would our contemporary political struggles resonate with these insights? Simultaneously, as humanism flourished, many Renaissance thinkers extended their inquiries into the structures of society, addressing issues like justice, governance, and the rights of man. Figures like John Locke and Jean-Jacques Rousseau, though slightly post-Renaissance, were deeply influenced by the humanist principles that had taken root during this transformative era. The Age of Enlightenment, which descended upon Europe in the following century, would draw heavily on the foundations built by Renaissance humanism to articulate concepts of liberty, equality, and fraternity. These dialogues about freedom, rights, and the social contract echoed through history, reshaping governments and societies worldwide in revolutionary ways. Nevertheless, as we draw connections between the Renaissance and the Enlightenment, we must not lose sight of the tensions inherent in societal shifts. The rise of new ideas often faced opposition, leading to censorship, persecution, and violence. The fallibility of human beings meant that the Renaissance's ideals were not embraced by all, sometimes resulting in further marginalization of those who dissented from prevailing views. This brings us back to the theme of personal agency and identity that emerged during the Renaissance. While some individuals found their voices and claimed their place within the socio-political landscape, countless others remained voiceless or were actively suppressed. Women, who made remarkable strides, often faced double standards. The contributions of remarkable figures like Anguissa and Gentileschi provided inspiration, yet the broader societal constraints limited many women's roles to the domestic sphere. How can we reconcile these triumphs and struggles, and what does it signify for today's discourse on gender equality? The Renaissance also sparked conversations surrounding race and ethnicity, topics that are more relevant now than ever. The Age of Exploration brought new cultures into contact, but it also initiated a narrative of superiority that would transform into colonial attitudes. These perspectives, grounded in Renaissance ideas of civilization and the other, laid the groundwork for systemic inequalities that persist to this day. As we consider the Renaissance's legacy, we must be mindful of how its triumphs can be re-evaluated and challenged through the lens of contemporary understanding. Ultimately, the Renaissance is a striking reminder of humanity's capacity for both creation and destruction. This period of reawakening didn't just advance knowledge, it instigated dialogues that reverberated through time, asking profound questions about existence, governance, belief, and ethics. These inquiries remain central to our world today, reflected in ongoing debates over individual rights, power structures, and the inherent dignity of all peoples. As we conclude our journey through the Renaissance, we are left with richer insights into how this extraordinary history informs our present. We've witnessed the conflict of ideas, the emergence of new forms of governance, and societal shifts, all interwoven into the fabric of contemporary civilization. The Renaissance didn't simply end, its lasting influence evolves alongside humanity. So, I encourage you to reflect on your own place within this broader tapestry. Ask yourselves, how do the themes that define the Renaissance resonate in your own life? Are there personal narratives of creativity, inquiry, and the pursuit of knowledge that mirror the struggles and triumphs of that era? The Renaissance serves as a testament to our potential for growth, transformation, and understanding. As you continue your journey through history and into the complexities of modern life, remember that the pursuit of enlightenment, framed by the questions posed during the Renaissance, is a legacy we all carry forward. The story continues, and each of us has the power to contribute to the unfolding narrative. In a world rich with both challenge and opportunity, carry forward the lessons of the past as we embrace the unknowns of our future. Thank you for embarking on this exploration with me. Our shared journey, much like the Renaissance itself, is an ongoing quest for knowledge and meaning in an ever-evolving world.